Good evening, I'm Juanique Toot, and you're tuned in to NB12 broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, Paul Adderley laid to rest. Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram defends his administration's 52-week jobs program. The Ministry of Finance flooded with applications for stamp tax exemptions. Plus, could motorists soon find themselves paying tolls? We've got those stories and so much more coming up tonight. NB12 starts right now. Topping news tonight, former Attorney General Paul Adderley was laid to rest today. His outstanding contribution to Bahamian politics and this nation's development were remembered during a state funeral at Christchurch Cathedral. Jasmine Bonnaby has a story.
It was a service of thanksgiving as family members and friends chose to focus on their fondest memories of the late Paul Adderley, saying he was a man who simply loved his country. Adderley was 84 when he died in hospital on September 19th due to complications from a long illness. In his remarks, Prime Minister Perry Christie called Adderley a clever legislator and social reformer. Christie, who was a close friend of Adderley, says many cannot comprehend who and what Paul Adderley was or what he came to mean to the Bahamas over his 84 years.
Paul Adderley was a patriot for whom no task was too demanding. No burden too onerous, no personal sacrifice too great, if it was calculated to preserve the Bahamas and move it forward. Paul Adderley loved this little country of ours. He loved it with all his heart and soul, and he never stopped loving it, and he never stopped serving it either. Paul Lawrence Adderley, a founding father of the modern Bahamas.
The Prime Minister said in 1971, when Adderley rejoined the PLP following a period of estrangement, he embraced the then emerging campaign for independence and helped to legitimize it for many who would have otherwise turned their backs. Christie said this dynamic continued in the years to come. Mr. Christie said he has no doubt future historians would conclude it could not have been done without Paul Adderley, and the PLP owes him a great deal.
Paul Adderley joining the PLP gave instantaneous legitimacy to PLP and a struggle for majority rule among the influential class of Bahamians for whom the PLP would have had little appeal.
Reverend Dr. James Moultrie was also a close friend of Adderley and says Adderley will be greatly missed by all who had the pleasure of knowing him.
I was privileged to see him on the local and the world stage, and in either place, Paul had no equal. He was fearless in his arguments, whether in courts in the Bahamas or in the World Court at The Hague. I saw him up close in the United Nations, in the Organization of American States, in CARICOM, and in the Commonwealth. I saw him up close in the delicate negotiations of the Law of the Sea Treaty, or at heads of government or foreign ministers' meetings. I was with him.
Paul Adderley became a legend in Bahamian politics after committing decades of his life to public service and the development of an independent Bahamas. He was one of the framers of the Bahamas Constitution. Adderley held various posts in the Pinling cabinet. He served as Minister of National Security, Minister of Education, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Finance. He was Attorney General for 17 years. Both Prime Minister Christie and Reverend Moultrie said they didn't want Adderley's legacy to be forgotten, so government will seek some way to honor his contributions. Adderley was laid to rest at Western Cemetery this afternoon. Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.
The government has heavily criticized the Ingram administration's 52-week jobs program in recent weeks, calling it everything from unstructured to grossly over budget. Well, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram is defending the multi-million-dollar program and says he looks forward to an audit the government plans to conduct into the initiative.
Well, that'd be wonderful, because the same people who worked for me when I was Minister of Finance and Prime Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Debbie Bastian and those are the same people who will be working for Mr. Christie. So they would be able to tell him what it is that they did or didn't do in terms of who they put on the job, who they paid, where they were supposed to be working, and the circumstances.
Not only does he welcome an audit into his administration's 52-week jobs program, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham says he would be very interested in the results. He was responding to Prime Minister Perry Christie, who recently told reporters that he has directed State Minister for Finance Michael Halkitis to take a closer look at the temporary jobs program. Mr. Christie called the initiative a scandalous tactic to employ people, some of whom he says collected checks but did not report to work. Meantime, Labor Minister Shane Gibson argued that it was grossly over budget, costing government more than the $25 million allocated for it. Well, Mr. Ingraham says there's a very good reason for that.
The program exceeded expectation. We initially determined we'd have a $25 million program. The demand was so great that we agreed that we'd extend it and increase the number of persons, and we'd make provisions to pay them in the budget for 2012-2013. We want to re-elect it, and so we couldn't do so.
The retired North Abaco MP says more than 3,000 unemployed Bahamians benefited from the program. In September 2011, the first group of people were placed at government agencies and private companies. Those people have since been taken off the program, but there are still hundreds more who will end their temporary contracts between now and May 2013, as the start dates were staggering. Shavargo Lang, who served as Minister of State for Finance in the Ingraham cabinet, has called on government to extend the program. However, Mr. Ingraham said he would not have done so had the Free National Movement been returned to office.
No, I didn't intend to extend the program. The program was a 12-month program. Everyone who was employed for 12 months. At the end of the exercise, we expected that they would obtain some skills, and which of course would help them to go into a job, or be able to start their own little business, or obtain a job elsewhere. A good number of them were, in fact, hired. For instance, we sent several of them to a bank. The bank found them to be very qualified people and hired them all. I think we paid for the first week or two, and a number of employers found very good employees out of the program. And so we expected that a good number of persons would have been re-engaged.
As the former government's jobs program comes to an end, Prime Minister Perry Christie says his administration will launch a national training agency aimed at creating a certified workforce to help replace lost jobs. He says the government is looking at controlling spending while protecting existing jobs, adding that government must play a role in retraining Bahamians. The Prime Minister says he expects Labor Minister Shane Gibson to announce the details of a national training agency in the near future. According to the 2012 Labor Force Survey, which was conducted in May and referenced the last few days of April, unemployment in the Bahamas dropped from 15.9% to 14.7%. Speaking of jobs, the number of people applying for jobs on Bahamar's website continues to climb. In fact, nearly 1,000 Bahamians have submitted resumes to the developer. Director of Bahamar Academy, Kristen Wells, says they are now actively searching for junior executives ahead of the mega resort's December 2014 opening. Additionally, she says Bahamar recently hired 3 candidates in its associate program.